Hello, everybody. Here we are, project number 5 for dual credit biology B. Anyways, you guys, really quickly, for this lab, what we'll be doing is looking and exploring ecosystems. You'll be able to get outside for this one, go take a little walk out in the park or whatever else you need to do. Okay, so I hope this is a good time for you. I pick a nice day, nice weather, and get outside and get some fresh air. Okay, so for this one, what you'll need to do is you'll need to pick an ecosystem. You can go to the park and do that, something like that there. You could go out in your backyard, wherever it is that you want to really analyze that ecosystem. Now, before we get into this, what I really want to do is just give you a brief little overview of what are ecosystems, how are they made up. This information will then help you to answer the questions that will come later on in this unit when you're doing this. Okay, so let me get this thing started for us here. Down here. Okay. Let it load. All right, so you guys, when we're looking at ecosystems have a lot of things going on. This is one of my favorite things to study because there is so much stuff. All the things we've been learning is happening in this vast, this small but still vast area. Okay, and we have energy that's being transferred and moving. There's producers, there's consumers. There's so much going on and integrated to make this work. And so what we'll be doing here really quickly, I want you guys, first of all, that you should understand already, but if you don't, make sure you understand what is a producer, what does it mean by a primary producer, and then how do consumers get energy from their environment. So primary producers, like it shows right here, are plants. Okay, things that take energy from the sun to make their food. They do not require other organisms to make that food. They can do it all themselves. And if we go back to biology A, why is that? Well, they have a special molecule or a special organelle in their cells called chloroplasts that will help to carry out photosynthesis for these organisms. And so basically, like I said, it's just them getting energy from the sun through photosynthesis. They're taking carbon dioxide from the air, water from the ground or from the atmosphere, and then using that sunlight energy to convert those two matter molecules into glucose and oxygen. Okay, quick little refresher there. Sometimes, though, there are places where there is no light, and yet we still need producers. And so when we look at that, there are special organisms. They're called it's called chemosynthesis. That's what they carry out. But they can actually create energy, create sugars, but they do not have sunlight to do that. And so they do that using chemical energy. And one of the main chemical energies that they use is hydrogen sulfide, as you can see right down here. So they take carbon dioxide, that's still there. They take oxygen from the water. And with chemical sulfide, they can then make their sugar and then some sulfur byproducts. Okay, let me move this up here. All right, there we go. All right, so you can see there's two different sources that we can get energy in an environment. We have photosynthesis and then chemosynthesis. Both are very valuable depending on what environment we're looking at. The ones that you guys will be looking at will probably be most likely using photosynthesis. So in these ecosystems, we have consumers. So we have our producers, then we have consumers. And it's the consumers that rely on those organisms that make their food to survive. Okay, we are a consumer. We cannot survive without those plants and other organisms that take out the producers, everything else falls apart. Okay. So there's three different types of consumers. We have herbivores, carnivores, and then, like us, omnivores. So the more consumers that there are as well as we have scavengers, tridivores. These would be things that eat dead material. Then we have decomposers. So very similarly to your project number 2 that you guys did when you were exploring fungus. Fungus is a type of decomposer that is very valuable in the ecosystem. Think about what would happen if you don't have these three types: scavengers, decomposers, and detritivores. If we didn't have these three things, nutrients would not be recycled as quickly as they are. Okay, so because of these three things, energy is recycled and being able to be used over and over again in that environment. So these are very valuable consumers right here. When we're looking at energy, so we kind of looked at and saw how matter flows through an environment, how it cycles. It doesn't really flow, it cycles through, how it starts at the producer and goes up to the consumers. Then it can go through these detritivores, scavengers, or decomposers and get brought back into that system. What we notice is energy doesn't follow that. Energy will flow through a system. It does not get recycled. And so we'll look at that, how energy will flow through an ecosystem, and looking at how we analyze this using what we call energy pyramids. All right, so here we go. So when we're looking and looking at how energy flows, a lot of times we can make a food chain and then make some food webs. So a food chain is one step-by-step thing. So you have your plant. The plant gets eaten by this consumer. Then this consumer is eaten by this consumer, and then this consumer is eaten by this consumer. It's a straight line going through. What you can do is you can actually put multiple food chains together to make a food web. And we will show you a picture of that. There it is. I don't know why it didn't show up. Okay, so here's a food web. Okay, so you can see that there's so many different food chains, and we can map a food chain right here that's marked in yellow or orange. Okay, and what you'll notice here is you have your primary producers. What would this then be? Well, it's a consumer because it eats a plant. This is what we would call our primary consumer. This would be our secondary consumer. And then this would be our tertiary and quaternary consumer. This one's even got a fifth consumer. Okay, so when I'm using, or when you read about second or third or whatever consumer, you know at what point that is found in that food chain. All right. So like I talked about, there are the decomposers that help to recycle material, and then that material that is recycled is brought back to the primary producer to be able to make whatever it is that we're making again. So you can see how valuable these decomposers are. If we did not have this, we would have a bunch of houses or things that just litter the land, and it would not be able to be recycled back. So how we do this, you guys, is using what we call an energy pyramid. And this is a very important rule that you guys will see. And this is knowledge that they have discovered that from the primary producer, that's where 100% of the energy is found, you could say. And it receives its 100% energy from the sun. What we actually notice is as it goes through the ecosystem, through the food web, through the food chain, it loses 10% of the energy each time. It loses 90% of the energy. Only 10% energy is passed on at each time. And so that is very interesting, because if only 10% is getting passed on, where's that other 90% going? And what we know is it's leaving as heat. It's getting lost through this process. Through heat and other types of reactions. Okay, but only 10 is being able to be passed on, and so you can see that different ecosystems can only have maybe only 3 level of consumer. In the ocean, you might see some that have much more. Why? Well, it's because we have a bigger pool of energy down here. Organisms cannot live off of anything smaller, or they need a certain amount of energy to survive. And so if there isn't that source of energy, we can't have a 4th consumer up here, because it'd be 0.01% that's being passed on. Okay? Not very much energy. So you can kind of see that the bigger the biomass that we have, the more levels we can have as well. Okay, so if we had a bigger base of producers, that would mean that we could have a bigger base of primary consumers, bigger base of secondary consumers, a bigger base of tertiary consumers, and then even possibly a 4th level consumer, quaternary consumer if there was enough energy available. All right, so that's where we're going to stop there. And then what we're going to do is let me go back to our project. All right, so for this project, you guys, what you'll be doing, like I said, is you'll be going outside to really explore this ecosystem. It'll have you do several things, such as dig under the soil and look and see what's under there and what's living there. Take good notes as you're out there. Take a notebook so you can document. And then it'll say identify the primary consumers. Identify the secondary consumers if you can find some, things like that, okay? Secondary consumers, identify a tertiary consumer, and etc. Okay, identify some decomposers. So we went over all this stuff. Hopefully that was helpful, and it'll help you on this project to do a good job on it. Anyways, if you guys have any questions, let me know.